We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
One day right down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
And always feel that your life has ultimate significance.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Todd J. Hollis from Todd J. Hollis Law. We're here at Civil Action. We got a great new show today. We've got one of the top experts in use of force. He's going to talk to us about his thoughts on the Breonna Taylor matter, as well as the Antoine Rose matter. Maybe some other interesting things that maybe we never asked him before. So I've got a great guest here today, Kevin Mosley. Kevin, how are you?
I'm good, Todd. Nice to be here.
Hey man, I want to start by saying thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. I know you've got plenty of things to do, and I'm so appreciative, man.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about your background. I did some quick research. I know that you're a former Pennsylvania State police officer. Is that correct?
True. I'm a retired Pennsylvania State Trooper, 20 years, use of force, firearms instructor, peer contact, and crash reconstruction.
What does peer contact mean?
So within the department, and there was a New York Police Department that started this first. Most police officers don't like to talk about the problems that they're having on the job with respect to the things that they see. And within the New York City Police Department, they were having a rash of suicides, and they realized that police officers keep things in. They don't talk to anybody about the problems that they have. So in order to combat that, the department NYPD came up with peer contact, where they train officers to actually do reflective listening to hear the problems that their fellow troopers have. But then they give them a set of resources, professionals that they can send them to, whether it's financial, whether it's marriage counseling, those types of things, so that police officers can have someone to talk to, as opposed to just talking to police officers who aren't really trained to deal with the intricacies of those issues. You need professionals and mental health issues to deal with that.
All right. Well, I appreciate your perspective on that. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. And we've got limited measures of time, so I want our viewers to kind of get an opportunity to hear your perspective on use of force. So do me a favor, tell me what use of force is and how qualified immunity ties into that.
So within policing, when you go to the academy, you're trained that there is a use of force continuum. So you when you interact with somebody, just your mere presence is a use of force, considered use of force. You have verbal, you have physical, you have a number of different things that you can use besides going straight to your gun. You should never, unless you're faced with serious bodily injury or death, lethal force, you shouldn't be going to your gun. That should be your last resort. Otherwise, you've got an ASP baton, the expandable batons. You've got pepper spray. You've got your taser. So, and you got your hands. So there's a number of things, and you can de-escalate. There's a number of things you can use. And this is what, when we talk about use of force, they're trained in a continuum. They should have an understanding of how that works before you leave whatever academy you went through. So those are the tools you should be using.
Okay. So how does qualified immunity play into when a police officer, uses some measure of force in dealing with a third party?
So everyone has every department should have a set of standards and policies, guidelines that their officers should have read, they should have been made aware of, they should understand. And where qualified immunity comes in is the Supreme Court literally gives police officers almost carte blanche as long as you're not going against those standards that to be in effect. So if you, in all good faith, are attempting to do the right thing with respect to the amount of force that you're using, and something goes awry, that's where qualified immunity comes into play. But it's gone too far in terms of, all a police officer has to say is, I fear for my life. If a person is unarmed, and they're running away from you, how are you fearing for your life? That doesn't make any sense. But that's all they have to say in the court of law to qualify for qualified immunity.
So, in the cases that I have tried, where use of force, was used as a defense, the courts have basically said that, police officers, when confronted with certain situations, should not be held criminally liable civilly liable or criminally liable, I guess, unless this was a situation that they should have been aware of. In other words, they knew, based upon the existing case law at that time, that this particular action violated a person's civil rights. So only in those instances would they not be granted qualified immunity. Does that make sense to you? Oh,
absolutely. And one of the things that the state police was good at every year, we went over the civil law and the criminal case law that was new every year, so that officers were aware of what the latest court rulings, whether it was the state Supreme Court or the Supreme Court, what those rulings were. Now, whether or not local police departments did that on a regular basis, I don't know, but I know for the state police, we did that yearly. Once a year, you had to that was mandatory training for us.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because that's what we do here at Civil Action. I'm going to ask you some real tough questions. All right. Okay. I feel you can answer them. All right. All right. I want to know, does the blue line exist?
Oh, no doubt. There's no doubt it exists. And so when you look at policing and who are police officers, take state police, 95% are white men, and 96% are male. So that means only 6% are women and 5% are minorities in a state where we make up 11, 12% of the population. So when you look at that, and then you start to look at, okay, what are the attitudes of those people who are the police officers with respect to white men in policing across the country? 92% of white men who are police officers believe that this country has done everything that it should have done, that it needed to do to get rid of inequality for everybody in this country, particularly for Black people. Whereas you have black officers look at that and say, no, that's like, most Black officers don't think that is the case. So right there, you have a schism, and part of it, and you look at that and you have to understand that that's called denial. And that's part of the problem, that immediately when you look at policing, you're looking at a culture of denial when it comes to dealing with African Americans.
So you've got police officer A who's making an arrest. Police officer B and C, they're watching the arrest. And they see police officer A doing things that they know violate the third party's civil rights. But they don't say anything. They don't mention it in the report. They don't tell a supervisor. As a matter of fact, the third party is saying, hey, man, you're not supposed to be doing this. They know that police officer A is supposed to be doing those things, but yet they don't say anything. What's your position on that? Have you ever seen that take place? And how do we stop it?
So I have. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me when I was in a DEA office in downtown Pittsburgh in terms of the culture. I had stopped a guy on the Pennsylvania Turnpike for speeding, come to find out that he was wanted by the DEA. Testify in federal court, go to the DEA office. Lead DEA agent says to me, and we're talking back in early 90s, late 80s. Lead DEA agent says to me, we're looking for young Black guys driving really nice cars. And I'm like, wait, what? Those are the people that they were literally wanted to target. And I realized right then and there, I needed to change how I did things. And I did, in terms of implementing the drug interdiction training that I had gone through the DEA with so that I did not profile people. With respect to some of the things that I've seen, besides that, department has rules and regulations where you have to be aware that when you walk into court, are you going to be testifying or are you going to testify to what you actually saw? And with myself as being a crash reconstructionist, I know that once I got on the scene, I was responsible for everything. And I knew that a year later, I'd probably end up in deposition and I'm in a room full of lawyers and I don't know who's on my side, who's not on my side. And I just have to testify to the best of my ability, but while I'm there, do everything possible to make sure that justice is served. That doesn't always happen. People make mistakes and people try to cover their tracks and cover up their mistakes. And when you get in court, I mean, you get in front of a good lawyer, as you know, they can tear your testimony apart if they find out that something does not make sense. And
but you've got, but I understand that, and everything that you say is to be expected. When you're a police officer and you come in and you pledge to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, you take that solemn swear. So you should tell the truth, right? But what happens when you as a police officer see, another police officer beating up, civilian guy, and you guys are friends. And you don't necessarily want to tell on your friend. I mean, I'm not saying you in particular, but I'm saying, I know that there are other situations where other police officers have been in that situation. Why is it that those police officers don't do what they know they should do?
So within the culture of policing, within policing itself, part of the problem is that police officers get lackadaisical. It's just like any other job. Policing is boring. People want you to see think it's like on TV. It's not. For the most part, it is boring. The situations that can lead to tragedy are few and far between. What happens is police officers don't practice what they are taught, so that when they're in those on a regular basis, so that when they're in those situations, they know what to do. And when that happens, far too often, people resort to they escalate force far too rapidly. And or the force that they use is inappropriate for the situation they find themselves in. And or after the fact, force has been used, they don't want to render aid and assistance. They don't want to call an ambulance. Or if an ambulance is there, they hold them back. We saw that with George Floyd. And I've seen that. Whereas in my own case, when I saw it, I was like, hey, I saw a guy got pepper sprayed. I get there. The trooper said, I really don't want to give this guy any first aid. He doesn't deserve it. Trooper was mad. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But what we have to, by our rules and regulations state, you have to give this guy first aid. You have to at least rinse off his face. Once I explained that to him, because I said, if this guy files a complaint, this is what you need to do. Cover yourself, do the right thing. And he did. He did the right thing. But if you don't have people there stating that, okay, I get that you're mad, I get that you're angry, or, oh, wait, this is not the right thing to do, then it gets out of control. And then you have this mad scramble like what we saw in Breonna Taylor. That was ridiculous. She didn't have, how do you file an incident report in the state that this woman who got shot 6 times had no injuries? That's insane. More heads should be rolling in that department. I mean, the police chief is gone. And the interim police chief is now going to be gone, but it's the same. He's going to retire. But how do you get to a point where within your department, the culture is that we're just going to cover our butts no matter what? And that's where qualified immunity, Colorado got rid of it and said no more. But, just a couple of days ago, we see in Aurora, Ohio, Aurora, Colorado again, there was a black woman who was hogtied and taken on a 20-minute ride upside down in the back of a police cruiser. This is the same police department that murdered the young man that was a violinist. The young black man who was a violinist just happened to be walking down the road with a mask on because he had a blood condition where he was constantly cold. And they just decided someone decided that looked suspicious. What? He's walking down the road carrying what he had from the store. How is that suspicious simply because he had a mask on? These are the things where police officers really need to consider. They need to understand the difference between the use of the law and when it's applicable and when it's not. And far too often, people can think that just because I have this badge, I can do whatever I want. And it's like, no. One of the things we need to be doing is literally every day with insurance companies can have some responsibility in this. Insurance companies need to say to police departments, look, you need to every day have some type of go over at least one case law where you talk about this is what happened in this situation. This is what's expected of you in this situation, or this is where the police went wrong in this situation. You look at what happens in these protests, and I think a lot of people need to understand that a lot of the responses that we've seen were 93% of the protests have been peaceful. It's the police who have been escalating use of force against peaceful protesters. It doesn't make sense. But that, again, where are the supervisors standing right there, and they're letting the police officers do this? That makes no sense. And using pepper spray against your own population or tear gas against your civilians. They did that in Aurora. Again, go back to Aurora, Colorado. They were holding a visual for Elijah and playing violins, and the police came because they thought Antifa was going to be there, which is an ideology. And that woman is now their police chief. That makes no sense.
Well, Kevin, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to sort of give you a last and final thought. How do we correct, some of these issues that seem, more often than not to always happen to African American people? We always say, well, the laws need to be changed. The police officers need to recognize this. But what can we take away from this conversation that we can do, I guess, as a culture to try to change these situations that, keep happening so often that they now become routine? It's not even shocking anymore.
Right. I think everybody needs to vote. You have to vote for mayors who are going to hire police chiefs who are going to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion into the culture of policing. Unfortunately, right now, because of who the administration is nationally, you can't even teach diversity, inclusion, and equity because he came out with an executive order against it. If you get any type of federal funding, he's going to snatch your funding away. But I think if we get rid of Trump, that needs to happen. You need to vote for mayors who are going to say, you need to have diversity, equity, inclusion. You need to start going to city council meetings. You need to start voting for people on school boards who are going to implement a curriculum that teaches the true history of this country and not just American exceptionalism. We need to understand how we got to this point in time. And within police departments, even if you're not willing to teach diversity, equity, and inclusion, you need to teach case law on a regular basis at your roll call, 10 minutes, and just say, this is what you can and can't do in these situations. And when you're doing use of force training on firearms and for all of your other use of force training, you need to start holding your men accountable. You have to hold your men accountable and women accountable in all those situations. And then how you do that is you train them and you maintain your training, and so that they don't have any excuses for what's going on. And you have to be honest.
All right.
Have to be honest.
I love it. And listen, Kevin, I can't thank you enough, for taking time out of your very busy schedule. I see you out here. You're doing great things. I know you're probably enjoying your retirement. Hopefully, maybe I'll be able to invite you back on the show. We have some other interesting, topics and points people might want to hear your perspective on.
Okay, Todd. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, listen, that's our show for today. I want to thank you guys, for tuning in. Kevin, is really truly one of the best use of force experts that we have out here. I wanted to appreciate and thank him for the time that he's given us today. I know I want to also thank you. There's a lot of things that you could be doing, but you're right here with me. So I appreciate that. And I thank you very much. Have a good day.
We have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we are dealing